Imagine a continent with more natural resources than any other on Earth. A population that's young, hungry, and rapidly growing. A market that's exploding with opportunity. A place where China, Russia, the US, and Europe are all fighting a silent war. Not with bullets, but with influence. This is not science fiction. This is Africa. And the world powers are terrified because Africa is rising and nothing can stop it now. Welcome to the channel. In today's deep dive, we unravel the incredible story of Africa, a continent too often ignored, underestimated, or misunderstood. But behind the headlines of poverty and conflict lies a different reality, one filled with growth, ambition, innovation, and power. From the deserts of the Sahara to the bustling streets of Lagos, from the copper mines of Zambia to the tech hubs of Nairobi, Africa is changing. And as it rises, the geopolitical balance of the world could shift forever. In this video, we'll explore why Africa is becoming the next global superpower, how its resources, population, and innovation are reshaping the world, what the West fears the most about Africa's rise, and who's already trying to control the continent's future. Let's dive in. Africa's hidden power. Africa is the second largest continent in the world, both by land and by population. But more than that, it is the richest in natural resources. It holds 90% of the world's platinum supply, 70% of the world's coltan, critical for smartphones, 50% of gold reserves, 30% of the world's known mineral reserves, 12% of the world's oil, enormous gas reserves. And yet, for decades, this wealth has been exploited, not for the people, but by foreign powers. But that's changing. Africa is waking up. Countries are taking back control of their natural resources. New trade agreements between African nations are removing colonial-era barriers. The African Continental Free Trade Area, the largest in the world, has connected 1.4 billion people under a single market. This is economic power, and the West knows it. The youthquake, Africa's demographic advantage. Here's something the world can't ignore. Africa has the youngest population on Earth. 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 30. By 2050, Africa's population will double to 2.5 billion, a quarter of all humans on Earth. This is both a challenge and a weapon. While Europe and Asia are aging rapidly, Africa is exploding with youthful energy. This generation isn't satisfied with charity. They want opportunity. They're starting businesses, innovating with technology, demanding better governance, and building futures. This demographic dividend is Africa's secret weapon, and the West is worried. Why? Because youth means change. Youth means revolutions. Youth means a new world order that isn't controlled from Washington, London, or Paris, but from Accra, Addis Ababa, and Nairobi. The silent Cold War, global powers in Africa. Africa has become the center of a new kind of Cold War. Not between East and West, but between everyone. China is building roads, railways, and ports across the continent, part of its massive Belt and Road Initiative. From Djibouti to Zambia, Chinese investments have skyrocketed, but critics say this comes with debt traps and dependency. Russia is sending private military contractors, weapons, and offering security deals, especially in places like Mali, Sudan, and the Central African Republic. It wants influence, resources, and allies in UN votes. The US and Europe are scrambling to catch up. America has increased its military footprint with bases and drone operations, while pushing soft power through aid and democracy programs. France, once the colonial overlord, is being pushed out by rising anti-French sentiment. What we're seeing is not just a battle for land or money. It's a battle for Africa's soul. Why the West is truly scared. The West isn't afraid of Africa's poverty. It's afraid of its potential. Strategic independence. African nations are beginning to act independently. They're no longer voting blindly in favor of Western agendas at the UN. Some have rejected Western military bases. Others have nationalized industries. New alliances. African countries are forging closer ties with China, Russia, Turkey, and India, reducing Western influence. BRICS is expanding, with African nations invited to the table. This changes global power equations. Digital leapfrogging. While the West is bogged down in legacy infrastructure, Africa is leaping straight into the future with mobile banking, renewable energy, and blockchain-based systems. Pan-African identity. A new generation of Africans is proudly reclaiming their history, languages, and culture, rejecting colonial narratives. Movements like decolonize education and Africa for Africans are growing. The West fears losing control, not to chaos, but to a confident, united, powerful Africa. Innovation rising, Africa's tech and talent. Did you know Africa has more mobile money transactions than any other region? From Kenya's M-Pesa to Nigeria's fintech boom, Africa is innovating from the ground up. Lagos is being called the Silicon Valley of Africa. Rwanda is using drones to deliver medical supplies. South Africa is leading in AI research. Egypt is building one of the world's smartest cities from scratch. African startups are attracting billions in funding. Local tech solutions are being exported globally. And digital nomads are setting up shop in Cape Town and Dakar. The world expected Africa to follow. But Africa is now leading in unexpected ways. Obstacles and opportunities. Africa's rise is real, but not guaranteed. There are real challenges. Corruption, political instability in some regions, infrastructure gaps, debt from foreign lenders, climate vulnerability. But here's the catch. Africa is aware of these problems, and many countries are confronting them head-on. The African Union is pushing for conflict resolution, better governance, and regional cooperation. New anti-corruption agencies are emerging. Young leaders are demanding accountability. Women are rising to leadership positions, and African billionaires are investing back into their countries. Africa doesn't need saving. It needs fair partnerships. The future superpower. Here's the future we're heading toward. Africa becomes the world's manufacturing hub. It dominates global trade routes with new ports and infrastructure. African languages and media begin to influence global culture. Africa becomes the largest voting bloc in global institutions. And eventually, we may see a United States of Africa, a single, powerful voice on the world stage. It may sound like a dream, but it's already in motion. And that's what terrifies the old powers. Because for centuries, the narrative has been that Africa is weak, poor, and dependent. But that era is ending. Africa is the future, and the future is now. If you're still thinking of Africa as a continent in crisis, you're not seeing reality. Africa is dynamic. Africa is evolving. Africa is powerful. The next global superpower isn't rising from the West or the East. It's rising from the very heart of humanity, the cradle of civilization. And the world needs to decide, will it support this rise fairly or try to stop it in fear? Because one thing is clear, Africa will rise, with or without permission. If this video opened your eyes, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who still sees Africa through the lens of the past. Let's challenge the narrative together. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Africa can truly become a superpower in our lifetime? Why or why not? Until next time, stay curious and stay aware.